Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Berkeley County Board of Education meeting this Tuesday, September 28, 2021. I call the meeting to order. I declare a quorum is present, and the media has been notified. Is there a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved.
Second.
I have a motion from Mr. McQuillan, a second from Ms. Tanner to approve the agenda. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, we'll call the question. All in favor of the motion respond by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, nay. The ayes have it. By the way, Ms. Littleton is with us on the telephone, so she is also in the meeting by telephone. So the vote was 7-0. The motion is approved. Is there a motion to approve the minutes of the board meeting of September 14, 2021?
Second.
We have a motion from Ms. Tanner and a second from Mr. McQuillan to approve the minutes of September 14 meeting. Do we have any discussion? Hearing none, we'll call the question. All in favor of the motion respond by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, nay. The ayes have it, 7-0. Is there a motion to enter into executive session?
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion from Mr. McQuillan, second from Ms. Wofford, to enter into executive session. The stated purposes of executive session are to be discussion of employment, appointment, assignment, demotion, discipline, or release of an employee or employees as needed. 2C, legal updates regarding a pending, threatened, or potential claim or other matter covered by attorney-client privilege. 2D, the discussion of a contract related to the purchase of property. 2E, 4 student attendance appeals and 3 expulsion appeals. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, we'll call the question. All in favor of the motion of going into executive session, respond by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. The ayes have it by a vote of 7-0. We are in executive session. Excuse me. Is there a motion to return to regular session?
So moved.
Have a
Second.
motion from Ms. Wofford, a second from Ms. Littleton to return to regular session. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, we'll call the question. All in favor of returning to regular session, please respond by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. Ayes have it by a vote of 7-0. We are in regular session. For the record, no action was taken in executive session. We are now at section 3A of the agenda, and I will yield to Ms. Kirsten Tanner to introduce our students that will perform the National Anthem.
Good evening. This evening, our student spotlight is the Westview Middle School Chorus, directed by Ms. Lindsay Maher. I would like to ask them to join us. They'll be singing the anthem for us this evening. Please feel free to clap when it's over, and then we'll do our moment of silence, and then they will perform one other musical piece for us.
Stand.
Shines
Please be seated. Ms. Maher, before you get started on this next piece, can you tell everyone where they can hear your chorus singing soon?
Yes, we're having our first concert on October the 5th. It'll be at 6:30 p.m. at Stratford High School. Free admission. We would love to see you there. We're going to sing this selection along with several others. We have 135 individuals and all of you present, so we'd love to have you come and support us that night.
So for those online, they're going to have a concert October 5th at 6:30. Sorry, I forgot to give you a mic. 6:30 at Stratford High School, and it'll be a free affair. She's got 135 students, and they'll be singing several pieces. This is one of them. Thank you for coming this evening.
Awesome.
Again, we thank you guys so much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Great job. The next item on the agenda is citizens' comments. In order to conduct the meeting in an orderly and efficient manner, we ask that you honor the following guidelines. Stakeholder comments are welcomed and encouraged. However, the board will not take immediate action on public comments at this meeting. Any person wishing to address the board must register prior to the meeting. Comments must be regarding programs, policies, or procedures. Comments regarding complaints against employees other than district-level executives or references to students other than the child of the speaker will not be heard in public session. Groups addressing the same topic should select one speaker. Comments will be limited to 3 minutes per speaker. The board chair reserves the right to allot additional time or to halt public comments that do not adhere to the guidelines. Our first speaker is Mary Toko. The comment is mandates for vaccines, quarantine of healthy children, etc. Welcome, ma'am.
Thank you very much. I'm honored to be here today. First, I would like to just say that I'm a parent of 5 grown adults and I have 10 grandbabies, and I'm very concerned about the world. But anyway, I do not believe it is the role or the responsibility of the state and local government of South Carolina, nor the South Carolina Department of Education, to make medical decisions for our families. Each family has the right and the freedom to make their own decisions about how they raise their children, including the type of medical care that they choose or refuse. So I would like to mention quickly about the PR safety testing. Dr. Kerry Mullis was the one who developed the Pcr test, and he won a Nobel Peace Prize back in 1993 for inventing it. PCR stands for polymerase chain reaction. I'm sure many of you have heard testimony about how it is not really a decent test. According to Dr. Mullis himself, he said it cannot be totally and should never be used as a tool in the diagnosis of infectious disease. Mullis also admitted that the PCR test doesn't tell you if you are sick. It does not identify or specify COVID viruses, nor does it do the Delta virus. Using the test on children, I believe, violates a constitutional right if it's mandated. So I'm very concerned about this. I also would like to know who's paying for these tests that are requested on children. I've not heard anything about that. So I'll go on and move on because my time is running out here. I also would like to comment on quarantine healthy children. I believe to quarantine healthy, non-symptomatic children from attending school is a form of discrimination. Forcing healthy children to stay home and deny them an education because another child has a fever or a cough is nonsense. It is a violation of their rights and actually is a Marxist attempt to pin one group against another. It is also part of the Communist Manifesto. If you look carefully, you can see that for yourself. In addition, herd immunity only happens by natural exposure and overcoming illnesses. That is how the human body is designed to develop a robust immune system. Children go through this process the first 10 to 15 years of their life. I have made it a personal mission to study natural immunity and have authored a book on this topic, referencing top immunologists in the country. And the vaccination, just so you know, we do not consider it a vaccine because it does not respond as a vaccine in the human body. I am asking that you never mandate our children to get an experimental injection. Also, I would like to remind everybody in the state of South Carolina that all parents have the right to refuse all vaccines based on medical and religious exemptions. That is still one of our rights here in the state. So even if a child gets vaccinated, the CDC says that they still must wear a mask. If a person gets vaccinated, it does not protect from the COVID.
Excuse me, Ms. Hooker,
Yes.
your time has expired.
Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Our next speaker is James Martin, concerned about emergency power for elevators. Mr. Martin.
I have become aware that quite a few schools in Berkeley County now have more than one floor, and that some of them at least do have elevators, and I can't find out if there is a backup power supply in case for whatever reason the electricity fails. What I did find out through one child that attended Berkeley High School was that the elevator there was for the handicapped children only, and you really need a backup power supply. I had to climb out of an elevator 50-something years ago when I was in my middle 20s. I would not be able to do it now, neither would a handicapped child. So My only concern is that if at any school there happened to be a child on an elevator when there was a power failure, there needs to be a backup power supply. And that's all I have to say.
Thank you very much, sir. Our next speaker is Jay King, the value of participation with school board meetings. Welcome, Mr. King.
Good afternoon, members of the board, parents, concerned citizens. My purpose today is to try to ascertain whether or not this board actually listens to the concerns of the parents and citizens that regularly show up to these board meetings. I'll be asking some questions, but they're just general questions for the board to think about, perhaps while deliberating prior to putting forth your vote on a particular topic. I'm not requesting a direct answer at this time. I would love to be able to regularly attend these meetings to keep abreast of the goings-on with the board and the decisions being made that affect our children. These decisions ultimately affect our communities, both in the short term and the long term, and I would appreciate having some say in that. Unfortunately, these meetings conflict with other long-running obligations I currently have, so I can only come once in a while. I do know many people here who regularly attend both meetings per month, and it seems that their concerns are not being addressed. It feels as if the board does what it wants, regardless of what is said during the citizen comment portion of the meeting. I'm not trying to be cliche when I say that the children are our future. They really are. The actions taken by this board have an impact on our future society, as these decisions will direct the paths of our children as they work their way toward adulthood. Bad policies could adversely affect our children and potentially produce horrible adults. So back to why I'm standing here. When we come here and voice our opposition to some of the policies you're promoting and voting through, do you actually take the citizens' opinions into consideration before going against our wishes? The people sitting here have actually taken time out of their busy schedules, delayed dinner, and fought through traffic to come here and speak their mind. They did this in hopes that something they say would get through to you, and maybe, just maybe, you would consider their opinions before just pushing through whatever you had planned on pushing through before you got here this evening. These are the opinions of the taxpaying citizens who not only fund the board, but fund the entire school system through federal, state, local, and property taxes. There's only room for 9 people on this board, which does not bode well for the thousands of people who are dissatisfied with the current actions of the board. Do we need to make a request to the state legislature to expand the school board to accept everyone who wants to be on it so that our opinions and wants can be represented? We have a representative government from the federal level down to the local level for a reason, to keep the government from becoming too unwieldy to function efficiently. But if this board doesn't represent the will of the people, then the system is broken and needs to be overhauled. Has it come to the point that we need to dismantle the school board and put together a new one? Or do we need to start a campaign to officially pull all of our kids out of the public schools and bankrupt you? Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Our next speaker is Ferris Davis. The concern is ESSER 3 survey and plans. Garris, I'm sorry. I apologize, but I know who you are. It looked like an F.
Anyway, appreciate getting a chance to talk. The only reason I'm talking today is I had a few comments before the meeting about ESSER 3. And I'm going to turn those into a couple of requests, and they're simple requests. We understand there was a survey done and it ended on July 30th, and want to know what the results are and where we can go look at the results. I looked at the survey and it looked like it could be pretty informative in analyzing the responses from the different constituents or stakeholders. So we need that information. The other thing is we want to know what you're going to do with the information which you're required to do in terms of determining how you're going to make expenditures. We understand also that there's some restrictions that come from the State Board of Education that are pretty detailed, that provides an audit trail for how you spend the money. And what we want to see, and for ESSER 3, we don't know all of the timing on it, but what we want to see is when you make a request to the State Board of Education with specifics on it, how you're going to spend the money, we'd like to see it. We don't want to see it beforehand. We don't want to try to get in the way of it. We want to see it once the stamp of approval is on there before you make the expenditure. Now, specifically, our reason for that is we want to follow those expenditures very closely into the classroom. Case in point, everybody knows about all of the discussion and the controversy, won't even name acronyms and that type thing. There are some, and I think everybody in here knows what they are. Those elements and money that's being spent for that, we want to know what it's spent for specifically, which we feel that you have to outline in that detail back to the State Board of Education, including adding personnel, whether they be counselors, whether they be psychological people, behavioral, whatever they do. We want to understand the screener software that you're going to get to detect which students are in need of this. And then we want to know the expenditures that are going to be done for whoever is administering these behavioral things in the screening. Who's providing the training? How much does it cost? And eventually we want to get into the content of it, and we want to view it. And that's the least that we expect. What I need and what we need is before the next school board meeting, we need a response. Get in touch with us. Let's dialogue about it. Let's see what we agree on and what we can do, and then we'll be prepared for the next meeting to see how big the gaps are between what we think and what you think. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. I'd like to make a brief comment about that. And I know it's not norm that we discuss things openly, but as you're probably aware, the board does not approve ESSER 3 funding. That is an administrative decision that is approved by the State Department on the plan that the superintendent and the school district sends to the State Department. We did approve ESSERs 1 and 2, but not ESSER 3. So that is the information that you may not have been made aware of, Mr. Davis. So, okay. Our last speaker is Terry Hardesty on the Barrow FOIA.
Good evening, members of the board, Superintendent Jackson. I'm going to speak briefly again about the Barrow FOIA and once again call for the resignation of our board chairman based on this FOIA. And you might think, well, this is kind of an old subject and this happened a long time ago, but it still is very profoundly affecting this district. Not too long ago, we had a consultant working in the district that had been superintendent of this district for a while, and he actually, in his career, built 30 schools. The board, when I was on the board, actually spent time and money going and looking at the schools he built and looking at other prototype schools to replicate in this district. And Dr. Parker was working on that when he was abruptly let go. And you may wonder how that correlates. Well, you can think back that when Mr. Barrow was an administrator in this district, Dr. Parker didn't renew his contract. So you can kind of put two and two together. It's still affecting this district. Thank you.
The next agenda item is any... I don't think so. I think that's all. Did I miss a citizen's comment?
Yes.
I must have inadvertently overlooked it. Excuse me, Dr. Sheila Foster. Actually, I took it out of order. To vax or not to vax? Are we creating second-class citizens? Dr. Parker, excuse me, Dr. Foster, please excuse my error.
I wasn't going to let you get by with it.
Could you pull the microphone down towards you a little bit?
Okay. Our students seem to be being suspended or put into home study or whatever, and being treated differently depending upon whether or not they've had the jab. This jab is not a vaccine. In a vaccine, they put a weakened or dead form of the virus into your arm, your body reacts. It says, this is not supposed to be here. It makes something new. This is a DNA product. It's put into your body. Your body then produces the virus and then fights it. Your body may produce slightly different variants than mine. So we may find that we have a COVID variant with your name on it one of these days. This is experimentation, and you and your children are being the guinea pigs. It's against the Constitution. Amendment 4 says the right of people to be secure in their persons, houses, papers, and effect against unreasonable search and seizure shall not be violated. It's also against the Nuremberg Code of 1947 that came out in response to the atrocities of Nazi Germany. The Nuremberg Code starts out, the voluntary consent of human subjects is absolutely essential. This means that the person involved should have legal capacity to give consent, should be so situated as to be able to exercise free power of choice without the intervention of any element of force, fraud, deceit, duress, overreaching, or other ulterior form of constriction or coercion, and should have sufficient knowledge and comprehension of the elements of the subject matter involved as to enable him to make an understanding and enlightened decision. How many of you know that the vaccine contains things like glyphosate, aluminum, thimerosal, formaldehyde, MSG, decomposing animal DNA, phenol, lead, acetone, peanut oil, propylene glycol? This is wrong. We need to think about this very carefully. You're relying on Dr. Fauci. I don't know how many of you know, Dr. Fauci was the lead physician in AIDS back in 1983. He actually started in 81. He insisted upon one single drug to treat AIDS, Bactrim. He's considered to be responsible for 17,000 deaths before AZT was permitted to be used. If you know anything, if you've looked at I've actually got a little bit of time. If you look at the WHO website on COVID, there's a state in India, Uttar Pradesh, I think. Uttar Pradesh has gone from a very high rate to, in fact, it's dropped 98.7%. They have a zero COVID response at this point. You know what they did? They made ivermectin free to all of their citizens. You say, okay, little village, they gave them all these pills. No, that's a place with 220 million people. That is 2/3 of the size of the United States. And they have gone to zero COVID by using ivermectin as a prophylactic. Think about it. And look at what Dr. Fauci is doing now. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. The next item is item number 5 on the agenda. Any action is required for items from executive session. We will hear the attendance appeals for students number 1 and 2 together. Do we have a motion?
Mr. Chairperson, I make a motion to grant the appeals of students numbers 1 and 2.
Second.
We have a motion from Mr. McQuillan, a second from Ms. Wofford, to grant the attendance appeals of students number 1 and 2. Do we have any discussion? Hearing none, we'll call the question. All in favor of the motion respond by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. Nay.
Nay.
The ayes have it by a vote of, I believe it was 5-2. Maybe we should do a hand. All in favor, raise your hand. Then I had it wrong. We had a vote of 3 positive. All opposed, raise your hand.
I'm confused for a second. Because even
Can't have a failing motion, you gotta have a passing one.
So we have, did you vote, Ms. Marone?
I said aye.
You said aye.
Aye.
So we have
So, one,
one,
two,
two, three.
three,
We have four
ayes,
ayes
three
and
nays.
3 nays, so motion carries.
Yes.
Entertain a motion for attendance appeals of students number 3 and 4 together.
Mr. Chairperson, I move to deny the appeals of students number 3 and 4.
We have a motion to deny from Mr. McQuillan. Is there a second?
Second.
Ms. Tanner made a second. Is there any discussion? All in favor of denying the attendance appeals of students number 3 and 4, please raise your hand. 1, 2. All in favor of denying the appeal of,
That's what we just did.
of all opposed, raise your hand. The motion carries to deny the appeal by a vote of 4 to 3. We'll entertain a motion for the expulsion appeal of student number 1.
Mr. Chair, I make a motion that we accept the appeal and that we place the student on strict probation.
We have a motion by Ms. Littleton for a strict probation status. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a second from Ms. Marone. Is there any discussion? All in favor of the motion of a strict probation, respond by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay.
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 Do we have another motion?
Mr. Chairperson, I move that we grant the appeal of student number 1 and assign the child to attend the alternative school.
The motion was,
You need to announce the results.
you have to announce the motion was defeated.
The motion was defeated. Yes, thank you. So, Mr. McQuillan, you've made a motion to assign the student to the alternative school.
Correct.
Is there a second?
Second.
We have a Ms. Tanner is a second. Is there any discussion? All in favor respond by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay.
Nay.
Ayes have it by a vote of 6 to 1. You entertain a motion for the expulsion appeal of student number 2.
Mr. Chairperson, in the matter of student number 2, I move that we grant the appeal and assign the child to attend the alternative school.
We have a motion to assign the student to the alternative school. Is there a second?
Second.
A second from Ms. Tanner. Is there any discussion? All in favor of assigning the student to the alternative school respond by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay.
Nay.
Ayes carried by a vote of 6 to 1. The final expulsion appeal of student number 3, I'll entertain a motion.
Mr. Chairperson, in the matter of student number 3, I move that we grant the appeal and assign the child to attend the alternative school.
We have a motion from Mr. McQuillan. Do we have a second to assign the student to the alternative school?
Second.
A second from Ms. Wofford. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor of the motion of assigning the student to the alternative school respond by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Ayes have it unanimously by a vote of 7-0. The next items on the agenda are reports from the stand.
Wait.
Oh, we have one more. In fact, it's probably very important. Ms. Marone, you have a motion.
I move to authorize the superintendent to negotiate a contract for the purchase of property subject to terms discussed in executive session.
Second.
We have a motion from Ms. Marone, a second from Ms. Tanner, to authorize the superintendent to negotiate a contract for the purchase of property subject to the terms discussed in executive session. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, we'll call the question. All in favor of the motion, please respond by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed, nay. Ayes have it by a vote of 7-0. The motion is adopted. Now, the next items on the agenda are reports from standing committees. First, a report from the Committee on Academics and Innovation, Chair Kathy Littleton.
Mr. Chairman, the Committee on Academics and Innovations met on September 14, 2021. On the recommendation of committee, I move to approve the Head Start budget expenditure report for July 2021 and the Head Start credit report for July 2021.
We have a recommendation from committee. No second is required. Is there any discussion? All in favor respond by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. Ayes have it by a vote of 7-0.
Mr. Chair, that concludes my report.
Next on is the Committee on Finance and Capital Planning. Chairman Mac McQuillan, you are recognized.
Mr. Chairman, the Committee on Finance and Capital Planning met on September 14, 2021, and on recommendation of the committee, I move to approve the out-of-state travel as presented.
We have a recommendation from committee. No second is required. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor of the motion, please respond by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, nay. Ayes have it unanimously by a vote of 7-0.
Also, on recommendation of the committee, I move to approve the award of RFP 603-2021 for elevator maintenance to Otis Elevator for an initial contract term of 1 year for an estimated value of $45,000 with the option to renew for 4 additional 1-year terms for an estimated total contract value of $225,000.
We have a recommendation from committee and no second is required. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, we'll call the question. All in favor of the motion, please respond by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, say nay. Ayes have it by a vote of 7-0. Motion carries.
Also, on recommendation of the committee, I move to approve the award of fixed price bid 608-2122 for embroidered and screen printed apparel to Data Imaging and Associates Incorporated for Lot 1 and Herald Office Solutions and Promo Solutions for Lot 1 and 2 at an estimated initial contract value of $100,000 and a potential 5-year contract value of $500,000.
We have a recommendation from committee and no second is required. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, we'll call the question. All in favor of the motion, please respond by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. Motion carries by a vote of 7-0.
Mr. Chairman, that concludes my report.
Next is a report from the Committee on Human Resources. Chair Kirsten Tanner, you are recognized.
Mr. Chairman, the Committee on Human Resources met on September 14, 2021, and on recommendation of the committee, I move to approve the 2021-2022 salary book as presented.
Trying to find my place. We have a recommendation from committee. No second is required. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, we'll call the question. All in favor of the motion, please respond by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, nay. The ayes have it by a vote of 7-0. Motion carries.
Also on recommendation of the committee, I move to approve second reading of policy JBCA, admission of resident student as presented.
We have a recommendation from committee and no second is required. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, we'll call the question. All in favor of the motion, please respond by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, nay. Motion carries by a vote of 7-0.
Also, the committee met earlier this evening, and on recommendation of the committee, I move to approve first reading of policy EF, food services, as presented.
We have a recommendation from committee and no second is required. Is there any discussion?
Mr. Barrow, we said it in the committee meeting, but I'm not sure that everybody was watching, but this policy does not change the fact that we're offering students free lunch until June 2022. So although there are some information in this policy about debts and debt collection, it's not going to change the availability of free lunch and free meals, actually, breakfast and lunch to students. So I wanted to point that out for folks.
That's correct. Is there any other discussion?
I would like to ask Ashley Smith to come to the podium, and I'm hoping she has an answer about, do we have outstanding debt from prior to pandemic that parents need to be aware of?
Yes, we do have outstanding debt. I can't give you the exact amount, but it is relatively low, considering that we've had last year's the pandemic and we offered free lunches last year as well. But yes, we do have some outstanding debt.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you for allowing me to redeem myself.
Of course, of course.
Is there any other discussion? We'll call the question. All in favor of the motion, please respond by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, nay? Motion carries by a vote of 7-0.
Also on recommendation of the committee, I move to approve first reading of policy EFR, food services, as presented.
We have a recommendation from committee and no second is required. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, we'll call the question. All in favor of the motion, please respond by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed, nay? Ayes have it by a vote of 7-0. The motion carries.
Also on recommendation of the committee, I move to approve first reading of policy ADF, district wellness, as presented.
We have a recommendation from committee and no second is required. Is there any discussion? Ms. Wofford.
We did address this in 2017. There was considerable feedback from our principals about pizza days and ice cream days and things like that are rewards, and then also marketed specific foods like vending machines and stuff like that. So I know a lot of principals watch. But if we could get feedback from administration on how this policy impacts day-to-day operations of our schools, and those things like pizza days or things like that, we would like to get feedback on that before the second reading of this policy, or I would like to get feedback to know how it will affect our schools.
Can we get that tonight? Does anybody in Cabinet have that answer tonight?
I think
Probably
it's
not.
going to be varied. I
Okay.
think different principals have different
True.
approaches, so I
True.
feel like
Okay.
there's going to be
Got it.
a varied.
Okay.
I've read this. I haven't really researched it much. Ms. Wofford and I had a conversation earlier, and as a retired principal, I'm concerned about a couple of the points of clarification in here in terms of denying rewards for student academic achievement. I feel like that is something that we should do. We should encourage students and give them some sort of an incentive when they go out of their way to have a good score, or from personal experience, a student passed the exit exam on the first try, they got a steak dinner. I don't see anything wrong with that. If you use activity funds and it's not taken from taxpayer expenses, so that's an item in here that I think we need to look at. So this is first reading, but I would like to have some feedback, Ms. Smith, and maybe take a look and speak with some of the other board members and get some clarification on that. Any other comments? So hearing none, we'll call the question. All in favor of adoption, please respond by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay?
Nay.
Okay, we'll do it by hand. All in favor of the motion, please respond by raising your right hand.
Well, this is just the first reading, correct?
Okay,
Yep,
it's
just
first
the
reading.
first reading.
Okay.
There was 4 and opposed. I actually voted for it. I'm going to oppose it. So
So
it'll
you
be
didn't
4-3,
4-3.
but it carries. First reading, it carries by a vote of 4-3. And we'll be looking forward to some amendments, hopefully, or some changes.
Sounds good. Mr. Chairman, that concludes my report.
Next on the agenda is the superintendent's report. Mr. Jackson.
Good evening, Mr. Chair, board members, members of the audience, members of cabinet. This month of September is coming to a close, Ms. Wofford. And as it comes to a close, we are fortunate to be able to share that our COVID-19 numbers in our schools and in our communities are declining. While we're relieved, we know that we must remain vigilant as COVID-19 has proven to be unpredictable. And we will continue to monitor our schools and keep our mitigation plans in place. As our schools mirror our communities, we ask that our staff, students, and families also remain vigilant while they're away from school so that we can stay safe and healthy and keep our schools open. Now, I do have some good news. 6 of our educators were recently selected as recipients for Berkeley Electric Cooperative's Bright Ideas in Education program. This program supports innovative and effective classroom initiatives that are not covered by traditional school funding. So I'd like to congratulate the following educators: Cassandra Cowdery from Berkeley Intermediate, Marcus McLean, Goose Creek Elementary, Catherine Tobin, Philip Simmons Middle, Amy Gary, Berkeley Middle, Shannon Hopkins, Cane Bay High School, and Hugh Wilson, Devon Forest Elementary. Please give a round of applause to these educators. I would also like to congratulate Principal Michael Huff of Philip Simmons Elementary for being recognized by the Keep Carolina Beautiful campaign with the Outstanding Performance in Education, Educator Award. Mr. Huff was nominated for the award due to his focus on the educational component with ending litter and stressing awareness and pickup with his teachers and his students. And so please congratulate Mr. Huff as well. If you haven't already done so, if you're not doing so, I encourage everyone to visit our Berkeley County School District website and our Facebook page and take some time to review the videos and stories from our Perseverance in the Pandemic series. The first 2 stories released a feature of our school nurses and the principal. But we've continued this series. I mean, just take a moment to watch it. It is, it's really telling, and it'll tug at your heartstrings a little bit. It got me a little bit before we posted it. But the first 2 stories featured a school nurse and the principal. And we've continued that series with features of staff across the district to include a focus on our school custodians who work tirelessly day in and day out to help keep our schools safe and clean for our staff and our students. And we hope this series will give a better idea for our public so they can understand the hard work that's taking place inside of our schools each day. I'd like to take a moment to thank Dan and Monica in our communications department for the great work on this series and the great work so far. Our communications team is doing some great work. They've covered some very, very moving stories, such as our Cherry Choo Choo from Hanahan Middle School, reunifications of our military families to their children, the good work that's an impact that's taking place with our SROs, Broadway dance numbers, and school career days. We have great things taking place in our schools, and I want to ensure these initiatives are properly acknowledged, and so we'll continue to do so and continue to spotlight all of the great things that are taking place in our schools. If you have good news or any upcoming events, please share, reach out to our communications department so we can properly acknowledge them and spotlight them. Mr. Chair, this concludes my report.
Thank you, Mr. Jackson. I have one very important message to the board members. I'd like for you to make sure that you notify Lacey if you're going to be able to RSVP on Thursday. For those individuals who are not aware, there will be a momentous groundbreaking ceremony for the new K-8 Carnes Crossroads School. This will be this Thursday at 10:30 a.m. Put it on your calendar. And the location is 380 Coleridge Drive, Somerville, 10:30. And if you recall, this is a project that has been long awaited, and it is something that we're looking forward to. And then hopefully, and I'm certain that in August of 2023, the doors will open, and hopefully around 1,000 to 1,200 kids will be gracing those doors. So does any other board members have any comments that they'd like to make under my report? Hearing none, we'll call the question to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion from Ms. Tanner, a second from Ms. Wofford to adjourn the meeting. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, we'll call the question. All in favor of adjourning, please respond by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, nay. We are adjourned by a vote of 7-0. Have a great evening.